We are resuming the class after a long interval. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya javaidhyagena yopakarotam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartra sutrasya bhashyasya kramat vivaranasya cha. So, just to recapitulate, we are dealing with this Patanjali Yoga Sutras, an ancient book on Indian psychology, which is in the form of a treatise, but not in long sentences or paragraphs, but pithy statements called Sutras, which is a very small statement which contains a lot of meaning and could be interpreted in so many different ways. Altogether, this text has got 195 sutras divided into 4 chapters: Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, Vibhudipada and Kaivalyapada. 4 chapters. The first one dealing with the highest spiritual concentration and meditation, samadhi. The second one deals with different means and methods of reaching this goal. The third one dealing with the consequences, the spiritual, psychic powers, capabilities that naturally result, that naturally emerge as a result of this practice. And fourth one, liberation. Though the first chapter deals with the highest concentration, and the second one dealing with the methods of reaching this level of concentration. We started the whole text in a different way. We first dealt with the first around 13 sutras of Samadhipada, because the earlier sutras of Samadhipada, the first chapter, defines and interprets some of the very vital points in yoga psychology. What is vritti? What is the supreme goal of yoga? How to control the mind? And different aspects of our mental world, the way our mind functions. And then we dealt with the sadhana pada, because sadhana means the means, the methods. And after finishing the sadhana pada, we'll go back to samadhi pada. So that's we'll slowly understand. So now, sadhana pada, which means that particular chapter of Yoga Sutras, which deals with different practices and methods, different forms of complications, obstacles, problems that may emerge when we start practicing yoga, and how to confront them. All these are described in the Sadhana Pada. I mean the chapter dealing with the means. In your printed book, it may be the second chapter, not the first one. So there are 3 main topics in Sadhana Pada. First one we already explained elaborately, Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pridhanani Kriya Yoga. Her definition is there. Kriya Yoga is the first preparatory practice where we try to give a spiritual orientation to our mind by practicing austerity, self-control, studying good books, feeding our mind with high ideas, spiritual ideas, positive ideas, ideas and thought currents that are helpful in spiritual life. So by giving a positive, natural orientation, a creative orientation, a spiritual orientation to the natural tendencies of the mind and the senses, that's called Kriya Yoga. Swadhyaya is a means of practicing this Kriya Yoga. I mean, you study good books, get yourself acquainted with good ideas, good thought currents, good vibrations, good samskaras, because right now our mind is full of different types of samskaras and impressions and vrittis. Some of them very good for help, for spiritual life, some of them helpful, some of them not so very helpful. So what we need to do is to increase the amount of good samskaras, good impressions in the mind. As I already explained, most of the conflicts that we face, not only in spiritual life, but even in ordinary life situations, where we are not able to do what we would like to do, what we sincerely want to do. We feel as if there is an invisible block, a mental block, an obstacle, which we are not able to get around. All these problems are due to the influence of negative samskaras, negative vrittis, negative thought currents, negative impressions that we have accumulated in our mind stuff. Maybe not in this life, even previous life. So they should be neutralized. This negative, wrong, unhelpful, undesirable impressions should be neutralized by increasing the amount of good samskaras, good impressions. So, that and swadhyaya, reading or self-study of good books, or some methods of feeding the mind with helpful, healthy thought currents is very helpful. The third one is Ishvara Pradhana, means self-surrender to a higher spiritual power. So that in all our actions and thoughts, the presence of the spiritual power, God, or even if you do not believe in God, if you sincerely believe in a great ideal, a great spiritual ideal, which embodies unselfishness, purity, nobility of thoughts, good actions, that self-surrender, means closely following the path, the ideal of a great spiritual icon may help us. So this is called Kriya Yoga. Klesha, Vasana and Karmasya, all these things are dealt with. Klesha means natural obstacles that we have to confront in our spiritual life. So I'm just trying to recapitulate, to bring you back to the context where we left in the last class, maybe almost 3-4 weeks back. So Klesha was one of the topics that we dealt with while discussing Kriya Yoga. Kleshas are nothing but natural obstacles, impediments that we confront. As I said, our mental world is divided into 3 categories: experience and 2 types of our reactions to that experience: positive and negative reactions. If the experience is good, we may like that. If it's not good, we may dislike it. This dislike may be twofold. Either we may go against it, or we may move away from it. So technically in Patanjali's language, or in the language of the commentators like Vyasa, Vajaspati and other great commentators who have brought out the gems of Patanjali's system through their extensive commentaries, they say one is bhoga, our experience from external world, and also from our own inner world. When we feel angry, when we feel happy or unhappy. All these are experiences, inner experiences from our own mental system. And then the way we react to that experiences is called Vega or Udvega. It means the way we react, our psychological, emotional, volitional reactions to these experiences. Remember, experiences do not necessarily mean experiences from external circumstances. Experiences that we are internally felt are also experiences, and how we react to that. We feel a tendency, I'm angry, or I want to be angry. This is a situation that should make me angry. Now when we are aware of that particular problem of the mind, we feel we become less angry. Awareness of the problem reduces the intensity of the problem. So my mind naturally evolves a mechanism to confront, or at least to some extent to solve the problem, or to reduce the intensity of the problem. So then vasanas, as I mentioned, there is another subject dealt with. Whatever we do, any action, not only physical action, even a mental action as a thought, a flash of ideas that crosses our mind, feelings, emotions, all these will create a kind of modification called vritti in the mental stuff. Chittam, this technical language, used in Buddhist tradition and also yoga tradition. Mental stuff, mind stuff, so to speak. Now, that's called vritti. Vritti becomes a samskara. When we do something, the visible, tangible result is only one insignificant part of the consequences. There's a much bigger and much more intense and much more strongly felt consequence, result. The way our actions influence our mind, the impression that our own action or our own thought creates in our mind. So it's called samskara, which again prompt to some action, vasanas, and again we may repeat the action if that action produced happy results. We may avoid the action if the action produces unhappy result. Then karmasya, it is a system, it is a mechanism in which the whole ideas and kleshas get accumulated and stored, which may work for the rest of our life cycle. So remember, all these impressions and samskaras are not felt just in this life alone. Patanjali's system conceives the phenomenon of human life not in terms of just one life, birth, life, death, a straight line progression. No. It is a cyclic progression. When we come to the end of this life cycle, we are born again. And again, we continue our actions and thoughts and mental processes exactly as a result, as a consequence of what all impressions we have gathered in this life. So this Kriya Yoga was one important subject that we dealt with. The next subject, that's what we are dealing with actually. In fact, we are coming to the end of this particular subject. It's called Dukkha Chadurvyuha. It may be called a kind of a quadrangle of dukkha. So that is another important subject. Sometimes it is called it's called Chaturvyuha. Chaturvyuha actually means a kind of a cycle, quadrangle. The first of these four elements which constitute this Dukkha Chaturvyuha is Heya, means something to be eradicated, the future Dukkha to be eradicated. The second, the cause of Dukkha. Dukkha here does not necessarily mean grief or sorrow in the literal sense of the term. We all feel a kind of imperfection in life. In fact, that's what motivates us to study. That's what motivates us to go ahead in life. See, a person who is fully satisfied with the present existing condition, either he's a great yogi, like Buddha, Jesus, Shankaracharya, Sri Ramakrishna and others, great spiritual personalities who have reached a very high level of inner tranquility, inner contentment and peace. Or we are primitive beings, just like brutes. Animals do not think of mysticism or philosophy. They don't go after higher ideas, higher thought currents. Give them food, shelter, that's enough. So also human beings who are living at the very physical level, they also feel a kind of satisfaction. But most of the people, the majority of human beings, thinking and evolving human beings, belong to an intermediary category. I mean, they are far above the animal kingdom. They are enlightened. They can think of higher ideas. So they feel a kind of incompleteness in the present physical existence. So they want to think of higher spiritual ideas. That's how all great spiritual teachers began their life. The feeling of incompleteness, imperfection. Of course, qualitatively it is different from the same feeling of human beings. Buddha felt in incompleteness and imperfection, so he became Buddha. He thought of the problems of the world, he became a Buddha. So also great teachers. So this is the first element. That means the desire to become perfect, which makes you aware of an inherent incompleteness or imperfection with the existing state of things. Second is the cause. Heya hetu means the association between the drashta and drishya, the seer and the seen in Patanjali system. As I said, Purusha is the seer. It is by its very nature self-conscious. It is by its very nature the witness. It is effulgence. It is awareness. Prakriti is its opposite, another fundamental category, which is inert by nature, but is also cause of the evolution of this universe. So this misidentification or the imaginary association of the Purusha and Prakriti, this is the cause of the dukkha or incompleteness. And how to get rid of this? Through liberation, through the practice of yoga, you attain kaivalya, which is the subject of discussion in the 4th chapter of the Patanjali Yoga system. By eradicating this dukkha, you get rid of this. It's called hanam, means getting rid of or eradication of the cause of dukkha. 4th one is hanupaya, the means for this. And the means for this is viveka khyati. The attainment of unbroken practice of viveka khyati or complete prajna or awareness or spiritual enlightenment. So these are the topics that we have been discussing. We will have 2 more sutras to deal with in this context, and then we will come to one of the most vital fundamental topics of Patanjali system. It is called Ashtanga Yoga. It is the 3rd important subject of discussion in the sadhana pada of Patanjali's system. So now we will come to the text. So so those of you who have a text, you can take this 26th verse of sadhana pada. That is viveka khyadihi aviplava hanupayaha. We already discussed somewhat, but still we will continue the discussion. The means for eradication of this ignorance, the cause of bondage, is unbroken discriminative intuition or higher spiritual awareness or spiritual wisdom. After this sutra 26th, the text continues describing this tasya saptadha pranta bhumi prajna. This is the very important sutra. Tasya here means pradyudita viveka khyate, means a person who has reached this level of awareness, the spiritual enlightenment, wisdom. I mean, a person who has become aware of his inner incompleteness and therefore is trying to start spiritual life, start yogic life, the life of a yogi, to attain the state of yogahood, yoga status. That person, or this attainment itself, both can be the meaning. Tasya saptadha pranthabhumi prajna. So this spiritual insight is sevenfold. It is an attainment that comes through 7 stages of spiritual evolution. That's what we are going to discuss today. 27th verse. So when this viveka khyati, this spiritual wisdom or awareness reaches its highest level, then that awareness, this spiritual enlightenment, gets differentiated into 7 kinds of prajna or insight. The first 4 states is called Karya Vimukti, and the second 3 states are together called Chitta Vimukti. We will discuss this subject. The first one state is you get the awareness that you have a problem, to interpret it in terms of our own language in modern times. To put it just in a very common sense understanding. How to put it? Otherwise a technical language. Well, let us think of a person who has, in our own time, say enough money, a very good job, everything, good home, relatives, friends, everything, good health, everything. Now, do you think that such a person will be happy? Maybe for some time. Because every state of achievement immediately makes the person aware of something else yet to be achieved. Again, this happens the majority of thinking, cultured, refined human beings. If this doesn't happen, either that person may be a moron, or he may be a brute, or he may be a Buddha. Buddha doesn't have this problem. Buddha had this problem before he became Buddha, the enlightened one. That's why he became Buddha. The majority of thinking, cultured, intelligent, refined people who have everything going on in their favor, who have no other problem, will fail at one stage or other. But there is something beyond all that we have right now. Sometimes it may be called a kind of spiritual discontentment, spiritual dissatisfaction. Now, you may not be aware of it. People who may not be spiritually inclined may start reading books, take to poetry, mysticism, music, and so on. But the root cause is a sense of inner incompleteness, inner imperfection. So this is what is called dukkha. So dukkha, if you read the Monier Williams or Apte dictionaries, dukkha is grief or sorrow. It is not that you become melancholic or you become depressed. No. It is a higher wisdom, the ability to be dissatisfied with the empirical worldly pleasures is the beginning of higher wisdom. It is the beginning of higher evolution in human existence. Now, this is called dukkha. Now, when you reach this level of higher wisdom, viveka khyati, what happens? The suffering that is to be eradicated, that is heya, as being known by me, there is nothing more to be known in this direction. So that awareness is the first sign that you have started your spiritual journey. Again, the cause of this suffering has come down. Third, eradication of the suffering, the jhanam, through Nirodha Samadhi has been achieved. So when you reach this level of Viveka Khyati, you reach some level of non-identification with the vrittis and impressions that emerge in our mind when we come in contact with external things. When we come in contact with external things, immediately we identify ourselves with this. Our sense of identifying with the emerging vrittis, that is the problem, and cessation of that process is called yoga. Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. It is not killing or deadening or dissolving of mental faculties. It is a positive sublimation of the higher spiritual faculties inherent in all of us. That is the real meaning of chitta vritti nirodha. That should be understood. Literal translations often cannot bring out the full meaning, the single word translation. Therefore, you have to read the commentaries to understand. Now, what is the meaning of this eradication of suffering? It is fully understood. And then, this buddhi has fulfilled its purpose. Again, these gunas may be there, but you will not be affected by them. And again, the Purusha remains in a state of witness. The Purusha, you identify yourself as the self-effulgent, the conscious Purusha, and not the emerging vrittis, empirical sensory things that take place every moment in our life. So these are the three stages. After giving a brief description of the 7 names of these 7 levels of evolution, I shall come to the second sutra, then we will understand the meaning. The first, it is called Jijñāsa Nivritti, means you already feel, well, you have no more Jijñāsa. Jijñāsa means Jñātum, Ichcha, Jijñāsa. In Sanandam in Sanskrit means desire to know is Jijñāsa. It has come to an end. I mean, you will not be going after many things. Otherwise, in this age of computer information technology, we come in contact many things. Our mind goes after them. What is that? What is this? Why this is like that? If this inquiry gets a spiritual orientation, then it's called yoga. If it doesn't get a spiritual orientation, that it leads to disintegration or fragmentation of our inner power of inner faculties. Whatever bits of disconnected information we gather do not become wisdom, they become only disconnected bits of information. So it is that leads to a constant desire to know bits by bit. It's not a higher desire to know spiritual truth. It's called Jijñāsa. This Jijñāsa Nivritti, this fragmented desire to know very many things, going after everything in a very fragmented, distracted manner. This tendency comes to an end, the first stage. Second stage is called Jihasa Nivritti. I mean, you reach a stage where nothing in the external world will be able to make us upset. Third is called Prepsa Nivritti. You feel a kind of inner wisdom, inner achievement, which again leads to mental tranquility. And the fourth stage is called Chikitsa Nivritti, which means where you feel you are able to, you will do your duty, but you feel a kind of natural tendency of the mind to become more contemplative, to withdraw from external distractions, external activities, which create more and more restlessness in the mind, which makes our mind restless. From those distracted activities, we feel a natural tendency to withdraw. And this is called, they call it Chikisha Nivritti. The fifth one is Shoka Nivritti. Shoka means dukkha, grief. Naturally the mind feels a kind of blissfulness. Fifth is called Bhaya Nivritti. Bhaya means fear. Fear should not be understood in its purely physical sense. Many of our actions are prompted by fear. Fear of various types. Fear of various forms. Even the richest man works hard to make more money because he fears that one day he may lose all his money. So he should go on accumulating. Billionaires want to become trillionaires because there is always a fear. These fears are not very logical. Of course, these problems may not be diagnosed by psychiatrists. Then they will lose their job. That happens. So suppose you feel an executive works hard, incessantly, with complete restlessness, no contentment, works hard to get a higher promotion. A billionaire wants to become a trillionaire, for that matter. So, behind this restlessness, which prompts them to go ahead again and again to achieve more and more, there is an element of fear. That may not be true in the case of a person who works hard to make both ends meet, or a reasonably rich person, well-to-do person, who is very eager to keep his money, everything intact. But very many people, a large number of people, will never have any taste of what we call by the word contentment or satisfaction in the true sense of the term. Why should it be so? So there is a fear. The rich man is afraid of thief. The famous man is afraid of infamy. The successful man is afraid of failure. So everyone has got some fear or other. And many of these fears are not very rational or logically explicable, but still we have it. Now this fear can be really eradicated only when you reach a spiritual state of evolution. And that state is called Bhaya Nivritti. It is the sixth stage. Sixth bhumika means the sixth stage or stage of this spiritual wisdom called Viveka Khyati, which you attain through this yogic process. The seventh one is Sakala Vikalpa Nivritti, means where your mind reaches a state of complete steadiness. When we identify ourselves with Atman, the all-pervading, the immanent reality. When we feel, is a state of wisdom, we feel a foreigner in this world. It's difficult to understand, except in the highest mystical sense. We often feel at home with these empirical things, in the midst of these empirical sensory pleasures. But a yogi, we feel a foreigner, an alien, in the midst of worldly pleasures. He feels that he doesn't belong to them and they do not belong to him. This happens because he has evolved beyond that limit. This is called Sagala Vikalpa Nivritti. Means mental distractions completely gone because you feel completely established in our state of Atman. This body, this mind, all these are there. But then you feel yourself identified with something transcendental, something that's good, that goes beyond mind, body and intellect. When you reach that stage, it is the highest stage of Viveka Khyati. So these are 7 levels of the emergence of spiritual wisdom in the yoga system. And now in the 28th verse, which in a way introduces the 29th one, which deals with Ashtanga Yoga. There's the third and most important part of the sadhana pada of yoga, where you find means or methods. That's how they give in English. In the published books, it comes the second chapter, but actually it is a means, the methods, the practices. So, yoga anushthanath asuddhikshaye aviveka kyatehi jnana deeptihi. This is the sutra. It's a slightly complicated word. Yoga anushthanath asuddhikshaye aviveka kyatehi jnana deeptihi. This is the 28th sutra. That is, when by this practice of these 8 Ashtanga Yoga, 8 limbs of yoga, which we are going to discuss from 29th sutra onwards, the light of knowledge arises. And that extends up to Viveka Khyati. How to reach this goal, this Jnana Deepti. For this, the fundamental disciplines are mentioned here. So that's the subject. So those of you who have got the text, you can take the 29th sutra of the second chapter. It deals with Ashtanga Yoga. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Ashtangani. So the sutra is something like this. Samadhiyo ashto angani, that's the splitting. So what are these 8 disciplines? In a way, the first 2 are very important. Yama, Niyama. These are fundamental disciplines, which not only spiritual seekers, but every human being needs to reach any level of higher achievement. Self-restraint, observances, posture, regulation of breath, withholding of the senses, fixing the mind, meditation, and perfect concentration are the 8 limbs of yoga. The first one is ahimsa. Ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, yamaha. First, certain universal disciplines are mentioned. Not necessarily for spiritual practitioners. For spiritual practitioners, it is very important. And mind you, for those who practice yogasana and breathing exercises, this is very, very important, because if you want to go crazy or if you want to become mad, there is no better way other than trying to practice all kinds of breathing practices without being established in these disciplines. So one should get fully established in these disciplines before taking up any complicated yogic postures like Siddhasana and Sirsasana and others. And also the breathing practices. That is the importance of this. Ahimsa, for example, non-violence. Now, in a way, it could be called abstinence in memory from injury. You practice complete abstinence from injury. Avoid any kind of injury. Truthfulness. Then abstinence from theft, continence, and non-covetousness are the yama, restraints. And to give an example, ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence. In its grossest physical sense, it means not hurting a person physically. But Patanjali's system goes deeper. Patanjali says, even there is a flash of thought, an idea, or a hidden desire in our mind to do harm to another person, to do injury to another person, that is himsa. So one should completely abstain from even a thought, an idea, not only from action or words, which may harm, which may amount to violence against another person. Because not only action, physical action, but even a thought can have its influence on our mind. So far as the impact is concerned, the way a violent thought reacts itself on our mind, its impact on our own mental system, there is not much difference between physical violence and violence in the form of a violent thought or violent idea. Both are equally harmful. Because if you have a violent idea, a violent thought, one day there is every chance that this violent idea may take the form of violent action. Because when you have a violent thought, immediately it registers in the mental system. A strong desire to do harm to another person without really doing any harm to another person. Even the desire, even the tendency or thought which is related to some kind of violence will becomes a vritti, and it becomes a samskara, it becomes a vasana, and then eventually it may become an action. Patanjali says, if not in this life, in the next life. So, complete abstinence from violence is the first condition for everyone. Now suppose you practice yogasana, all kinds of yogic practices, and physically become very active, very thoughtful, but you are naturally of a violent temperament. Your natural tendency towards violence will increase because yogic practices, yogasana practices will activate certain nervous systems, nadi vyuhas called, and also because it in a way increases or improves the metabolical system, it generates heat and energy, surplus heat and surplus energy. So this will become fuel to your natural violent tendencies. So Patanjali says that tendency should be stopped. So when you practice any of these yogic postures or breathing exercises, as I said, this energy, surplus energy and heat and enthusiasm, physical dynamism could be produced, generated. This may flow towards undesirable channels, through channels culminating in violence, if you are not fully established in non-violence before taking up any of these practices. And it's much more true with regard to breathing practices, pranayama. So to give you an example. And also extreme forms of meditation also. Meditation also, it produces extreme types of mental skills. If you got a strong power of concentration, focusing on one central idea with great effectiveness. But if you're also in violent temper, then you can imagine, you'll become very efficient in doing violence to others. So, the natural flow of these skills towards undesirable channels should be blocked. For that, you should get fully established in non-violence. So Patanjali says, first you should get fully established in non-violence. It doesn't mean that one should not practice yoga. It does not at all. But I mean to say, extreme forms of, advanced forms of either physical postures or breathing exercises will be positively harmful to anyone who doesn't follow these fundamental disciplines, at least to some extent. Another point which the commentators make is, even if you take a decision, even if you have a strong desire to get established in ahimsa, non-violence, that itself takes you a long way in being established in non-violence, ahimsa. So this is one example. First, so these are 10 disciplines mentioned. The first 5 disciplines are universal disciplines. So Patanjali says, Sarvabhauma Mahavratam. That's the second sutra says. But we'll come to that next. Next one is Satya. That is your truthfulness. So truthfulness, well, difficult to understand truthfulness. Truth could be sometimes called a fundamental category. It's a kind of categorical imperative, kind of thing in itself, in a way. But there is a moral dimension, ethical dimension to all these disciplines, ahimsa and satya. When we get fully established in satya, then naturally we become men and women of great integrity and character. So, words that we speak, actions that we do, and thoughts that we think should be in the same line. It's a very difficult thing, but that's called satya. Asteya. Asteya means actually, literally it means not stealing. Most people don't steal, of course. Why should Patanjali speak about this? Complete abstinence from theft. It means even a mental desire to possess something illegally, something that doesn't belong to us, something that belongs to another person. And a tendency, even a thought, which may not be expressed in words, to possess something that belongs to another person, that doesn't belong to us. So the meaning of these disciplines go deeper than the visible, the gross interpretations of the word. It goes deeper. So why deeper? The reason is, if you, as I said earlier, a violent thought or a thought related to falsehood, untruth, is as bad as doing a violent deed or doing something false or untrue, so far as their impact on the mental or the mind stuff or chittam or character is concerned. There is no difference. Difference is true only in the eyes of the law. Violent thought is not a criminal offense. Only violent action is a criminal offense. But from a spiritual standpoint, there is no distinction between a criminal thought which you do, which never is acted upon, and a criminal deed from a spiritual point of view. Because a person who has secret desire for anything that is wrong may one day do that in physical form. That's meaning. Second one is that is asteya, brahmacharya. Brahmacharya actually means continence. So we should remember the Patanjali system is not exclusively meant for monks and nuns only. It's meant for all people who want to exert control on their own system, their own biological drives, and those who want to sublimate their faculties and skills towards higher areas, either intellectual or scientific or any areas. When we regulate and restrain and control our other thought currents, lower levels, then only these skills, the higher skills will be developed. And that's a fuel for achieving higher things. Aparigraha means non-covetousness. Means mentally we should not have even a desire for something that doesn't belong to us. Of course, asteya is directly related to taking possession of something that belongs to another person through stealing, and aparigraha is a kind of subtler, much higher virtue. So, if we mean non-receiving of gifts, sometimes it be translated like this, with a great psychological implication. If you go on receiving favors from another person, then even it may be sometimes even unconsciously you become you feel a kind of psychological bondage, obligation. That obligation, which could be expressed in the form of gratitude or helping back, but then, even then, it could sometimes become a kind of slavery, psychological slavery. It doesn't mean that we can live in this world without some kind of give and take policy. That's true. But one should not have a strong desire for things belong to others, go on receiving things. Even if you don't need, still a desire to possess things, strong desire to possess things. Even if you have plenty of them at our own disposal, still a strong desire to go on increasing what we already have. This is called parigraha. Its opposite is aparigraha, means non-covetousness. These are the first fundamental disciplines. It's called yama. So, in the next sutra, Patanjali says that these are all universal spiritual vows, rules, great principles which everyone should follow. People belonging to all types, whatever class, may belong to whatever type. This fundamental psychological and mental disciplines are mentioned here. Now we'll have interaction maybe for about 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes, please. So we can raise doubts. Having?
How do I keep from having a violent thought?
Well, to begin with, cultivate an awareness that violence is not good. Second, violence is bad. Second stage. First, violence is not good, then violence is bad. And it may ultimately boomerang on you. Because a violent thought, one way or other, will return to you. Whatever thoughts we project to the outside world will come back to us, frequently with greater repercussion, greater force. Maybe this awareness may help us. This is one way to become aware of this. Anything that we do to others comes back to us. So in that case, why can't we give the mind a different turn? And this could be done by feeding the mind with thought currents related to non-violence. If you read the lives of great men like Gandhi, Buddha, Martin Luther King, all these, you find any great men everywhere, in all traditions. All great spiritual teachers were established in non-violence. So reading their life or taking a natural interest in any literature, in anything that contains some non-violent ideas, that's one way. Yes. Right.
So you mentioned Ashtanga Yoga, 8 limbs, which we just discussed. So ideas like non-violence, asteya, aparigraha. So these great saints, like how did they come up with these like words of wisdom or like these 8 steps? Is it through like knowledge through meditation or like looking at other people's lives?
Exactly. If you read a book like Mahabharata, the size of the book, in its larger version, it contains no less than 145,000 verses. Some 13 times as big as Homer's Iliad, Odyssey, and Virgil's Aeneid put together. And he was the one who wrote many other books. Now, some of the dialogues, there are, mind you, thousands of dialogues. The book contains stories of hundreds of dynasties. There are thousands of sages. How did they hit upon these wonderful ideas? How do we explain this? Things that we read in modern books on behavioral psychology, you find in one of the dialogues in Vyasa, without reading any of these books. Today you find a book with attractive title, but that you find in the ancient. I can give an example. Just to give an example, I mean how the ancient sages, how they learned this through meditation. You say, there's one dialogue with Maitreya and another Rishi, Narada Rishi, runs into maybe 300 verses. It's not a big portion of a book which has 145,000 verses, The bigger version. Smallest version has got 100,000 verses. Okay. Now the subject is this. Who is your best friend? One sage asks another sage. Simple question. Who is your best friend? So it gives two options. One, a friend who helps you when you are in trouble. Who shows compassion, mercy, kindness towards you. Another person, a person who is happy when you are happy. So when you are getting a very high promotion or something, he's happier than you. There's another person who, if you have lost your job, then he comes and helps you. May not help you when everything is going fine. The sage says, surprisingly, the person who is helping you in your times of crisis may not be, maybe, but not necessarily be your best friend. But the person who is happy when you are happy will be, there's no doubt, he'll be your best friend. Now what justification will you give? The logical analysis comes. A person who is helping you when you are facing a problem may be eager to help you. But he may become unhappy when you are out of this problem. He may want to see you in that problem, so he may be happy to get a chance to help you. You test whether that person is really your friend or not when you are out of this problem. Still, if he is very happy, then he is your best friend. So, only the best friend can be happy when you are happy. Of course, the person who helps you when you are unhappy, when you are in trouble, may be your friend, but he may not be your friend because sometimes when you have reached a higher level than him, he may be slightly unhappy. When you are out of your problem, he may feel, well, this fellow has get out of it. He may be slightly unhappy. Where did they get this idea? There is subtle truth in that. We should not misunderstand. A person who is helping you may be your friend. The verse doesn't say, Maitreya doesn't say he is your enemy. But there is an if there. But a person who is very happy when you are very happy is certainly your friend. There is no doubt. In the other case, there is a possibility that he may not be, because when you are out of your problem, he may feel sad, or this fellow is now out of the problem. He may be. So now, where do you get this subtle idea? This is from Mahabharata. There are many. So if you ask me the question where they got these ideas, all that we can say, at least at this, this modern time is 7,000, 8,000 years back they wrote, we can say through meditation, through contemplation, you can very easily find. See, when you read a great book, a great idea, when you keep that in your mind, if you go on thinking seriously, contemplating, the idea grows, expands, you get new possibilities, new possible ways of interpreting and understanding the idea. You feel that you never thought of those things when you first read it. So very often, the wisdom grows when you learn something, when you read something, you may not get it. That's why there is a verse, Acharya Padam Adate Padam Sishya Sumedhaya. Padam Sabbrahmacharya, Padam Sabbrahmacharya, Padam Sabbrahmacharya, Padam Shishya Sametaya. So, Acharyat Padam Adat. You get 1/4 of what you learn from your teacher. Another 4th, Sabbrahmachari Bhiha, means the other 4th of the wisdom you may get by discussing with other students in the same class. Padam Sabbrahmachari Bhiha. Then the other 4th, the 3rd you may get by your own effort. The 4th and the last portion of wisdom you get through contemplation, through meditation, through constant thinking. So, that's how it. Vivekananda gives a classic example to demonstrate this. He says, Newton sat under the apple tree. Anyway, that's how the story goes. And the apple fell on his head. And that led to his discovery of the gravitational pull of the earth. There are people, even a big stone falls on their head, they may go to the hospital and get surgery, nothing will happen to them. So where was this gravitational theory, this great scientific discovery? Not in the apple, obviously. Not in the tree. It was in his mind. Only an action prompted him to think deeper and deeper. And then finally he discovered it not in the apple or the apple tree, but in his own mind. So when we contemplate and think, ponder over higher ideas, other dimensions, new interpretations, new possibilities naturally emerge in our mind. That's what happens. That's how great discoveries are made. In science, in mysticism, in spiritual tradition, everywhere. So we will continue the discussion in the next class, next Friday, 7:30, same place. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.